I trusted her like my own mother. She smiled at my wedding, held my hand through miscarriages, watched me build a life with her son. Then I found the letters. 20 years of secrets she kept locked away. Every tear I cried, she knew the truth. Every lie he told, she helped him hide. Now she'll learn what happens when you betray the wrong woman. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I'm a pediatric nurse. I spent 15 years caring for other people's children while my mother-in-law helped destroy my chance at having my own. This is how I made her pay. The locked drawer. I wasn't supposed to be in that room. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had asked me to help her clean out the garage, not snoop through her guest bedroom. But when I went upstairs to use the bathroom, I saw the door slightly open. Something pulled me inside. The room smelled like lavender and old paper. Boxes lined the walls, labeled in Patricia's perfect handwriting. I walked over to the antique dresser by the window, running my fingers along the smooth wood. That's when I noticed it. The bottom drawer had a small brass lock, green with age. My heart started beating faster. Why would someone lock a drawer in a guest room? I pulled on the handle, but it didn't budge. The lock was old and rusted, but still doing its job. I looked around the room, feeling guilty but curious. Patricia was downstairs making lunch. I had time. I took a hairpin from my hair and bent it straight. My hands shook as I worked the pin into the lock. I told myself I was looking for jewelry or important documents, maybe old family photos, something innocent. The lock clicked open after 3 tries. Inside the drawer, my breath caught in my throat. There were bundles of letters, dozens of them, tied together with rubber bands. They were organized by year, stacked neatly like someone's precious collection. I pulled out the first bundle and saw the handwriting on the envelope. My husband's handwriting, David's handwriting. My hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped the letters. Why would David write letters to his mother? We all lived in the same city. They talked on the phone every week. I looked at the dates on the envelopes. Some were from 15 years ago. Some were from last month. I sat down on the floor, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. The carpet was soft under me as I untied the first rubber band. My fingers felt numb. I pulled out the first letter and began to read. The words blurred together at first, then became sharp and clear. Dear Mom, I need your advice. There's a woman at the conference. I stopped breathing. My vision went dark around the edges. I forced myself to keep reading, word by horrible word. David was telling his mother about meeting someone, about how attractive she was, about how he wanted to spend more time with her, but didn't know how to hide it from me. I grabbed another letter, then another. Each one was worse than the last. My husband had been writing to his mother about his affairs, about the women he met on business trips, about the lies he told me. And she had kept every single letter. 20 years of lies. I don't know how long I sat on that floor. Time stopped meaning anything. I read letter after letter, each one breaking my heart in a new way. The carpet underneath me grew damp from my tears. But I couldn't stop reading. David's handwriting filled page after page with details I never wanted to know. He wrote about a woman named Jessica from a medical conference in Boston, another woman named Sarah from a training seminar in Chicago. There were more names, more cities, more betrayals than I could count. But the letters weren't just confessions, they were conversations. Patricia had written back to him. I found her responses tucked between his letters, her handwriting neat and controlled. My hands shook as I read her words. David, darling, you need to be more careful. Rachel has been asking questions about your trip to Denver. Make sure your credit card statements don't show anything unusual. Perhaps tell her you had dinner with a client. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. She knew. She knew everything. And she helped him hide it. She gave him advice on how to lie to me better, how to cover his tracks, how to make me feel crazy when my instincts told me something was wrong. I found printed emails too, organized in folders by year. They talked about me like I was a problem to be managed. One email from David complained about me questioning him when he came home late. Patricia's response made my stomach turn. She's always been suspicious, sweetheart. It's her insecure nature. Just be patient with her. Buy her flowers and tell her she's being paranoid. She'll back down like she always does. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. All those times I questioned David about his behavior, all those times he made me feel guilty for not trusting him. She was in the background coaching him, teaching him how to manipulate me. I picked up another bundle of letters. These were older, tied with a faded rubber band. I checked the date on the first envelope and felt my world collapse. It was dated 3 months after our wedding. 3 months. We were still newlyweds, still happy, still in love. Or so I thought. The letter described a woman David met at a hospital fundraiser. He told his mother he felt trapped in the marriage already, that he made a mistake. Patricia's response told him to give it time, that all men feel this way at first, that he should just be discreet about his needs. I had spent 15 years with this man, 15 years thinking we were building a life together, 15 years of loving him, trusting him, believing in him, and his mother watched me do it while knowing every terrible secret he kept. The miscarriage. Secret, I was about to put the letters back when I saw a thin envelope at the bottom of the drawer. Something about it looked different from the others. The paper was whiter, newer. My hands were steadying now, the shock turning into something cold and hard inside me. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single page. The date was from 6 years ago. I started reading, and the room began to spin. I dropped the entire stack of letters and ran to the bathroom. I barely made it to the toilet before I vomited. My whole body shook as I knelt on the cold tile floor. The words from that letter burned in my mind, impossible to forget. David had written to his mother about putting something in my prenatal vitamins. He crushed up medication and mixed it into the pills I took every morning. I vomited again, my stomach heaving even though there was nothing left. Tears streamed down my face. I pressed my forehead against the cool porcelain, trying to understand what I just read. Patricia's response to that letter was carefully tucked behind David's confession. I had seen it before. My body rejected everything inside me. She didn't tell him to stop. She didn't express horror or concern for me. She only worried about him getting caught. She told him to be careful, to make sure the pharmacy records didn't show anything suspicious. I pulled myself up and looked in the mirror. My face was pale and wet with tears. My eyes looked hollow, like something inside me had died, and maybe something had. I had 3 miscarriages in 5 years, 3 babies I lost, 3 times my heart shattered into pieces. The doctors never found a cause. They ran every test imaginable. They told me sometimes these things just happen. They said my body would eventually be ready. They told me not to lose hope. But there was a cause. There was always a cause. David did this to me. He poisoned me. He killed our babies before they even had a chance. And his mother knew. She knew, and she helped him hide it. I walked back into the guest room on shaking legs. My whole body felt numb now, like I was moving through water. I picked up the letter again and read every word carefully. David wrote about not wanting children yet, about not being ready for that responsibility, about needing to focus on his career first. So he took that choice away from me. He made my body reject the pregnancies I wanted so desperately, and I cried on his shoulder after each loss, seeking comfort from the man who caused my pain. Patricia held my hand at the hospital, brought me soup, told me everything would be okay. She knew. She always knew. I pressed my hand against my empty stomach and felt something break inside me, but it wasn't sadness anymore. It was rage. Pure, cold, perfect rage, the inheritance game. I wiped my face and forced myself to keep looking through the drawer. If there was more, I needed to know everything. I couldn't stop now. My hands moved mechanically, pulling out folders and papers I hadn't noticed before. Near the bottom, I found a manila envelope thick with documents. I opened it and pulled out official-looking papers. Estate documents, legal forms. My father-in-law had died 8 years ago, and I remembered Patricia handling everything. She said David was too grief-stricken to deal with the paperwork. I believed her. I started reading through the documents, my nursing background, making the medical terminology easy to understand, but the legal language took more concentration. Then I found the emails printed and paper-clipped to specific pages. My hands started shaking again. Patricia and David had exchanged dozens of emails about his father's will. They discussed how to forge documents to keep me from getting my legal share of the inheritance. As David's wife, I was entitled to part of the estate, but they didn't want me to have it. The emails were cold and calculated. David wrote about opening bank accounts I didn't know existed. Patricia responded with advice about which banks were best, which ones asked fewer questions. They moved money systematically, hiding it from me piece by piece. I found a forged signature page next. My signature. Someone had practiced writing my name over and over on a piece of scratch paper, getting it just right. Then they used that signature on a legal document stating I waived my rights to the inheritance. The document was notarized. Patricia had signed as a witness, swearing under oath that I was present and willing. I was never there. I never signed anything. I never waived any rights. The pages slipped from my hands and scattered across the floor. Everything I thought we built together was a lie. The house we lived in, the savings account David always managed, the investments he made. How much of that was money he stole from me? I picked up another email and read about Patricia coaching David on what to tell lawyers, how to explain my absence from meetings, how to make it seem like I wasn't interested in the estate details. They painted me as someone too emotional to handle business matters, too focused on having babies to care about money, and I had been focused on having babies because I didn't know my husband was actively preventing me from getting pregnant, because I trusted him, because I trusted her. I gathered all the documents carefully, making sure I had every page. My tears had stopped now. My hands were steady. Something had changed inside me in that guest room. The woman who walked in looking for photo albums was gone. Someone new sat in her place. Her perfect son. I pulled out my phone with steady hands. My heart rate had slowed down. My breathing was normal again. The panic and horror had transformed into something clear and focused. I took photos of every single letter and email. I made sure each image was sharp and readable. My hands didn't shake anymore as I photographed David's confessions about his affairs. I captured every word of Patricia's coaching sessions on how to lie to me better. I took pictures of the forged inheritance documents, making sure the signatures were clearly visible. I documented everything about the medication he put in my vitamins. It took me nearly an hour to photograph everything. I was methodical, organizing the digital files into folders on my phone. Letters in one folder, emails in another, legal documents in a third, evidence of the poisoning in its own special folder. When I finished, I carefully put everything back exactly as I found it. Each letter returned to its bundle, each rubber band replaced in the same position. The manila envelope went back to the bottom of the drawer. I closed the drawer and locked it with trembling fingers. But these tremors were different. They came from adrenaline, not fear. I went to the bathroom and washed my face with cold water. I fixed my hair and wiped away the mascara streaks under my eyes. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked calm, determined, dangerous. I walked downstairs where Patricia was cooking dinner. The smell of her pot roast filled the kitchen, the same meal she made every Sunday. She was humming softly to herself, completely at peace. She didn't know I had just discovered her secrets. "Did you find the photo albums, dear?" she asked, turning to smile at me. That same warm, grandmotherly smile she always gave me, the smile that hid 20 years of lies. I smiled back at her. "I found exactly what I needed," I said, my voice steady and sweet. She nodded and turned back to her cooking. "Wonderful. Dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes. Why don't you call David and tell him to come over?" I pulled out my phone, the same phone that now held all her secrets. "Of course," I said. "I'll call him right now." I watched her stir the pot roast, adding her special seasoning. She moved around the kitchen like she owned the world, confident and comfortable. She had no idea everything was about to change. David answered on the second ring. "Hey, babe, what's up?" I looked at Patricia's back, at the woman who helped him destroy me. "Your mom wants you to come over for dinner," I said. "She made your favorite." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. "Perfect," I replied. "I can't wait to see you." I hung up and put my phone in my pocket. Patricia turned and smiled at me again. "He's coming?" "He'll be here soon," I said. Just enough time for me to set the table. I pulled plates from the cabinet and began arranging them carefully. Patricia had taught me how she liked her table set. Everything in its perfect place. Everything exactly as it should be. I made sure every fork and knife was positioned correctly. She had no idea this was the last normal family dinner we would ever have. Building my case. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on caring for other people's children right now. I had my own life to save. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone and laptop, drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I spent the weekend pretending everything was normal. I smiled at David. I made small talk with Patricia. I acted like the same woman they had been manipulating for 15 years. But inside, I was planning. Now, sitting alone in my kitchen, I started making calls. I found the best divorce attorney in the city through an online search. Her name was Margaret Chen, and her website said she specialized in complex divorces involving fraud. Perfect. "Mrs. Morgan," Margaret said during our phone consultation, "what you're describing is extremely serious. Can you come in today?" I was in her office by noon. Margaret was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. I watched her face as I showed her the photos on my phone. She didn't react much at first, just scrolling through image after image. Then she stopped at the letter about the medication. "This is attempted murder," she said quietly, "or at minimum aggravated assault. You need to file a police report." My hands were shaking again. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it more real. What about the inheritance fraud? Margaret scrolled to those documents. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy. Your mother-in-law could face serious prison time. So could your husband. She looked up at me. How do you want to proceed? I want everything, I said. I want the house. I want every penny he stole from me. I want them both to pay for what they did. Margaret nodded slowly. We can make that happen, but you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. They'll fight back. They'll try to destroy your credibility. Let them try, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded harder, colder. I have 15 years of evidence. We spent 3 hours going through every photo I took. Margaret took notes, asked questions, made copies of everything. She explained that the forged inheritance documents were felony fraud in our state. The medication situation was more complex, but with the written confession, the district attorney would likely file charges. What about the affairs? I asked. Do those matter? In a no-fault divorce state, not usually, Margaret said. But they establish a pattern of deception. They show his character, and if we can prove he spent marital assets on these affairs, we can claim dissipation of marital property. I liked how she thought. We talked about strategy. She told me not to let David or Patricia know anything was wrong. Keep acting normal, give them no warning. The element of surprise would be our greatest weapon. Before I left her office, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. Margaret advised me to start protecting my own money immediately. I transferred half of our joint savings into the new account. It was legally mine anyway. That week, I moved like a ghost through my own life. I went to work and cared for sick children. I came home and cooked dinner for my husband. I answered Patricia's phone calls and listened to her talk about her garden. And every night, I added more notes to the case Margaret was building. The dinner party trapped. Weeks later, I did something that surprised even me. I called Patricia and invited David's entire family over for dinner. His 2 sisters, his brother, his aunt and uncle, everyone. What's the occasion? Patricia asked, sounding pleased. No occasion, I said brightly. I just realized we haven't all been together in so long. I miss everyone. Patricia loved the idea. She offered to help me cook. Of course she did. She never missed a chance to play the perfect mother-in-law. I'll come early, she said. We can make it a real family feast. I spent days preparing for that dinner, but I wasn't just planning a menu. I went to an electronics store and bought small recording devices, the kind you couldn't easily see. The store clerk showed me how they worked, how they stored audio files, how long the batteries lasted. I placed them carefully around the house, one inside a picture frame in the living room, another tucked behind books on the dining room shelf, a third hidden in the kitchen, attached under the edge of the counter. I tested each one multiple times to make sure they worked perfectly. Saturday arrived. Patricia showed up at 3 o'clock, wearing her favorite apron and carrying grocery bags. I brought everything for my special roast, she said, kissing my cheek. I smiled and hugged her back. Her perfume smelled like it always did, like roses and lies. Thank you so much for helping, I said. I don't know what I'd do without you. We cooked together in the kitchen, just like we had dozens of times before. She told me stories about David as a child. She talked about her garden and her book club. She acted like the loving mother-in-law she had pretended to be for 15 years, and the recording device under the counter captured every word. David came home and found us laughing together. My 2 favorite women, he said, kissing first his mother, then me. I tasted the lie on his lips. The rest of the family arrived at 6. David's sisters brought wine, his brother brought dessert, his aunt and uncle brought stories and laughter. We gathered around the dining table like a normal, happy family. During dinner, I waited for the right moment. Everyone was relaxed, full of food and wine. The conversation was flowing easily. Then I said very casually, I was cleaning out some old boxes last week and found the most interesting letters. Old family correspondence. Amazing what people keep, isn't it? I watched Patricia's face. Her fork stopped moving halfway to her mouth. The color drained from her cheeks. David's eyes shot up to meet mine, then darted to his mother. That one look told me everything. He knew exactly what letters I meant. What letters? David's sister asked, reaching for more wine. Oh, just some old family things, I said lightly. Patricia, you've kept such detailed records over the years. It's really impressive. Patricia's hand shook slightly as she set down her fork. Rachel, I don't. It's nothing important, I interrupted, smiling sweetly. Just made me appreciate how every family has its stories, you know? Things people write down, thinking no one will ever read them. The silence at the table lasted only a few seconds, but I felt every heartbeat. David cleared his throat. More potatoes, anyone? The conversation moved on, but Patricia barely ate after that. Her eyes kept finding mine across the table, trying to read my face, trying to figure out what I knew. David kept refilling his wine glass. I smiled and played the perfect hostess, and every word spoken that night was recorded. The confession, recording. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room. David's brother started telling stories from their childhood. His sisters were laughing, their wine glasses empty, and faces flushed. I saw my opportunity. Patricia, could you help me with the dishes? I asked. I don't want to leave them until tomorrow. She hesitated. I could see the calculation in her eyes, trying to decide if refusing would look suspicious. Of course, dear, she finally said, standing up. We walked into the kitchen together. I turned on the water and started rinsing plates. The recording device under the counter was directly behind me, capturing everything. My heart pounded, but my hands stayed steady. Rachel, Patricia began, her voice careful. Those letters you mentioned? I found them all, I said quietly, not looking at her. Every single one. The affairs, the medication in my vitamins, the forged inheritance documents, everything. I heard her sharp intake of breath. I turned to face her, watching her decide between denying everything or trying to explain. Her face went through several expressions: shock, fear, then, surprisingly, annoyance. You went through my private things, she said, her voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. That was my locked drawer. You had no right. No right? I repeated softly. Like I had no right to know my husband was poisoning me? Or that you helped him steal my inheritance? Patricia's jaw tightened. She glanced toward the living room where everyone was laughing, then back at me. You don't understand, she said. David is my son. I was protecting him. From what? From being a decent husband? From you, she said, and her mask finally cracked. You were always too much. Too needy, too suspicious, too desperate for children. David needed space to breathe. I almost laughed. So you helped him poison me? Patricia waved her hand dismissively. It was just herbal supplements. Nothing dangerous. He just needed time before starting a family. You were pushing too hard. My hands gripped the edge of the sink. The recording device was getting every word. And the affairs? Were those because I was too needy too? Men need freedom, Patricia said, like she was explaining something simple to a child. It's just their nature. If you weren't so sensitive, so insecure, you would have given him the space he needed. Then he wouldn't have had to go elsewhere. If I wasn't so sensitive, I would have let him cheat without questioning it. Patricia sighed. You're twisting my words. I'm trying to help you understand. David loves you in his way, but you put too much pressure on him. You wanted perfection. You wanted this fairy tale marriage that doesn't exist. I wanted basic loyalty, I said. I wanted honesty. I wanted a husband who didn't poison me. Patricia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. If you expose this, you'll destroy him. His career, his reputation, everything. Is that what you want? To ruin his entire life because he made some mistakes? I looked at her carefully. This woman who held my hand during miscarriages she knew were caused by her son. This woman who welcomed me into her family while helping her son betray me. This woman who thought loyalty to her child meant helping him destroy another human being. You really think you did nothing wrong, I said, amazed. You actually believe you were being a good mother. I was protecting my son. You were helping him commit crimes, I said. Fraud, forgery, assault. Those aren't mistakes, Patricia. Those are felonies. Her face went pale again. You're blowing this out of proportion. If you just calm down and think rationally, I've never been more rational in my life, I said. I have copies of everything. Photos of every letter, every email, every forged document. And now I have your confession too. All of it recorded. Patricia's eyes widened. She looked around the kitchen, searching. You wouldn't. I already have, I said. Every word you just said is on tape, including the part where you admitted knowing about the medication and the forgery. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. Rachel, please. Think about what you're doing. We're family. I pulled my arm away. We were never family, I said. Family doesn't do what you did to me. Patricia's face transformed then. The sweet grandmother mask disappeared completely, replaced by something cold and calculating. You'll regret this, she said, her voice low and threatening. If you try to destroy my son, I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone what kind of person you really are, how unstable you've become, how obsessed and paranoid. Good luck with that, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. I walked back to the living room, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen. My whole body was shaking now, but I kept my face calm. David looked up at me, his eyes full of questions. I smiled at him, the same smile I had been giving him for 15 years. But this time he saw something different in my eyes. I watched him realize that everything had changed. The public reckoning Monday morning felt surreal. I woke up at 6 o'clock, made coffee, and got dressed for work like any normal day. Except nothing about this day was normal. By the time I left the house, several envelopes had already been delivered across the city. Margaret had filed the divorce papers at 8 o'clock sharp when the courthouse opened. Attached to those papers were police reports I had filed over the weekend. One report detailed the inheritance fraud, complete with photos of the forged documents. Another report outlined the medication David put in my vitamins, with Patricia's recorded confession as evidence. By 9 o'clock, Margaret called me. It's done, she said. Papers are filed, police have been notified. Your husband should be served at work within the hour. I was at the hospital when my phone started blowing up. David called 17 times. I didn't answer. His sisters called, his brother called, even his aunt called. I turned my phone to silent and focused on my patients. A 6-year-old with pneumonia needed me more than David's panic did. At noon, my phone showed 43 missed calls. I took my lunch break and listened to David's voicemails. The first few were confused. Rachel, what's happening? Call me back. Then angry. What the hell did you do? My lawyer says you're accusing me of assault? Then, desperate. Please, we need to talk. This is insane. I love you. I deleted them all. Patricia's calls were different. Only 3 voicemails, but each one was increasingly threatening. You've made a terrible mistake. Then, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. Finally, you'll pay for this. I saved those recordings and sent them to Margaret. By Monday afternoon, 2 detectives showed up at David's hospital. They didn't arrest him, but they asked him to come to the station for questioning. His medical director found out why. According to David's sister, who called me crying, they suspended him pending investigation. I also sent copies of the letters to every family member who attended that dinner party. Not all of them, just selected excerpts, enough to show what David had done, enough to show Patricia had helped him. I attached a simple note. I thought you should know the truth. David's brother called me that evening. Rachel, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. His younger sister sent a text. I'm horrified. Mom always said you were paranoid, but she was lying. I believe you. I'm here if you need anything. His older sister blocked my number, but it was Patricia's call that I'll never forget. She called at 7 o'clock, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You evil, vindictive bitch! You've destroyed my family. My son might go to prison because of you. Because of me, I said calmly, or because of what he did. You're ruining his life over nothing, over some stupid mistakes. You're going to make sure he loses everything. Like he did to me, I asked. Like when he poisoned me? Like when you helped him forge documents to steal my inheritance? We didn't steal anything. That money should have gone to David anyway. But it didn't, I said. It was legally mine too, and you committed fraud to keep it from me. Patricia's voice dropped to something vicious. You think you've won? You think this is over? I have connections in the city. I have friends. I'll make sure no one believes you. I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar and a gold digger who married my son for his money. The recordings tell a different story, I said, including the one from Saturday night where you admitted everything. There was silence on the other end. Then Patricia's voice came back, shaking with rage. Those recordings are illegal. You can't use them. Actually, in this state, I can. Margaret had explained the single-party consent laws to me. I was part of the conversation that makes the recordings legal. I'll fight this, Patricia said. I'll fight you with everything I have. Go ahead, I said. My lawyer's waiting. I hung up and blocked her number. That night, I sat alone in my house. Our house. Soon to be my house. The silence felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't have to wonder what David was doing. I didn't have to question whether he was telling the truth. I didn't have to smile at Patricia while she lied to my face. I was finally free, my new beginning. The divorce took 9 months to finalize. 9 months of legal battles, court dates, and depositions. But Margaret was right about everything. The evidence was overwhelming. David tried to fight it at first. He claimed I misunderstood the letters. He said the medication was just supplements he thought would help my health. He denied forging any documents. But then the handwriting experts testified. The pharmacist testified. Patricia's recorded confession played in court. I watched David's face when the judge ruled on the property division. I got the house. I got 2/3 of all our savings and investments. I got substantial alimony based on the earning potential he would lose when he lost his medical license. The judge called his actions reprehensible and a violation of the most basic marital trust. Patricia faced worse consequences. The district attorney charged her with conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and being an accessory to assault. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor wouldn't budge. The case went to trial, and the jury took less than 4 hours to convict her on all counts. She got 3 years in prison. Her perfect reputation, the one she cared about more than anything, was destroyed. The local newspaper covered the trial. People she knew from church, from her book club, from her neighborhood, all learned what she had done. David lost his medical license 6 months after our divorce was finalized. The medical board found that his actions constituted moral turpitude incompatible with the practice of medicine. He filed for bankruptcy a year later. Last I heard, he was working as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. As for me, I took the money from the divorce settlement and started something new. I founded a nonprofit organization called Second Chances. We support women who have lost pregnancies due to domestic abuse or partner sabotage. We provide counseling, legal assistance, and medical advocacy. The organization grew faster than I expected. Apparently, my story wasn't unique. Other women reached out with similar experiences. Some had partners who secretly had vasectomies. Others had birth control tampered with. Some, like me, had been poisoned. We helped them. We gave them resources. We connected them with lawyers like Margaret, who understood the complexity of reproductive coercion. We made sure they weren't alone. I still work as a pediatric nurse. I still care for other people's children. But now I do it without the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. I do it knowing I survived. I do it knowing I fought back. Sometimes I drive past Patricia's house. It sits empty now, slowly deteriorating. The garden she loved so much has turned into weeds. The paint is peeling. It looks exactly like what it is. A place where lies lived and died. David tried to contact me once, about a year after everything ended. He sent a long email apologizing for everything. He said he was in therapy. He said he understood now what he'd done to me. He said he hoped someday I might forgive him. I deleted the email without responding. Forgiveness isn't something he gets to ask for, and I don't need to give it to find peace. I learned something important through all of this. Betrayal doesn't just come from strangers or enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people who should protect you most. Family can hurt you deeper than anyone else because you give them access to your most vulnerable places. But I also learned that you don't have to accept betrayal silently. You don't have to protect people who hurt you just because they're family. You don't have to keep secrets that protect predators. The truth is powerful. Evidence is powerful. And refusing to be a victim is the most powerful thing of all. My life now looks nothing like what I imagined at 20. I'm not a mother. I'm divorced. I'm alone in many ways. But I'm also free. I'm also strong. I'm also helping other women find their own strength. Sometimes women ask me how I managed to stay so calm while gathering evidence. How I could pretend everything was normal while planning my escape. How I found the courage to expose people I once loved. The answer is simple. They took my choices away from me for years. They controlled my narrative. They decided what I was allowed to know about my own life. When I found those letters, I took back control. And once you have control back, once you know the truth, pretending gets easier. Because you're no longer pretending for them. You're pretending for yourself, buying time to build your case. I tell these women that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and methodical. Sometimes it's taking photos of evidence while someone cooks dinner downstairs. Sometimes it's smiling at the people who hurt you while you document their crimes. People think revenge has to be immediate and explosive. But the best revenge is thorough. It's airtight. It's letting the legal system do exactly what it's designed to do when you give it irrefutable evidence. Last week, I got a letter from a woman in Ohio. She found my organization online after discovering her husband had been tampering with her birth control for 3 years. She felt crazy, she said. She thought she was overreacting. She wondered if she should just forgive him and move on. I wrote back immediately. I told her she wasn't crazy. I told her what he did was a crime. I told her she deserved better. I connected her with resources in her state, and I told her my story. 2 days ago, she emailed me again. She filed for divorce. She went to the police. She's taking her life back. That's what Second Chances does. We show women they're not alone. We show them that what happened to them has a name, has legal consequences, has solutions. We show them they can survive and even thrive after betrayal. I'm 38 now. 3 years have passed since I found those letters in Patricia's drawer. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. The pain has faded, but the lessons remain. I date occasionally now, though I'm cautious. Trust doesn't come easily anymore. But I'm okay with that. Being careful isn't the same as being broken. It's being wise. My house feels like mine now. I repainted every room. I replaced furniture that reminded me of David. I planted a garden in the backyard, something I never had time for when I was trying to be the perfect wife for a man who didn't deserve it. David's sisters still contact me sometimes. The younger one, Jessica, visits every few months. She apologized for not seeing what was happening. She said she feels guilty for believing her mother's lies about me being paranoid. I told her she couldn't have known. Patricia was an expert manipulator. Jessica told me that Patricia wrote to her from prison once. The letter blamed me for everything. It called me vindictive and cruel. It said I destroyed the family over minor mistakes. Jessica burned the letter. She still doesn't get it, Jessica said to me. Even now, she thinks she was protecting David. She doesn't understand that what they did to you was evil. Some people never understand. Some people are so wrapped up in their own narrative that they can't see the truth even when it destroys them. Patricia is one of those people. She'll probably die believing she was the victim in this story. But history isn't written by the people who wish things were different. It's written by the people who document the truth. And I documented everything. The foundation continues to grow. We helped 43 women last year. 43 women who might have stayed silent, who might have believed they were overreacting, who might have let their partners continue to abuse them. We gave them information, resources, and most importantly, validation that their experiences mattered. I hired 2 full-time counselors and a legal advocate. We're expanding to offer support groups. Women need to know they're not alone. They need to hear other stories like theirs. They need to understand that reproductive coercion is real, it's illegal, and it's not their fault. Every woman who walks through our doors is someone's daughter, sister, friend. They're nurses and teachers and accountants and artists. They're smart, capable, strong women who ended up with partners who saw them as obstacles instead of equals. Partners who had mothers, fathers, or siblings who helped them instead of stopping them. That's the part that still haunts me sometimes. Patricia could have stopped David. With one conversation, one moment of honesty, she could have told him what he was doing was wrong. She could have told me the truth. She could have chosen basic human decency over blind loyalty to her son. But she didn't, and that choice cost her everything. I think about that when I'm working with women at the foundation. I think about how one person's choice to stay silent can destroy lives, how enabling abuse makes you complicit in that abuse, how family loyalty doesn't mean protecting family members who do terrible things. Real love, real loyalty means holding people accountable. It means saying no when someone you care about is about to do something harmful. It means choosing what's right over what's comfortable. Patricia never learned that lesson. Maybe she never will. But I learned a different lesson. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I could survive betrayal from the 2 people I trusted most, that I could gather evidence, build a case, and fight back without losing myself in the process. I learned that justice exists, even when it takes time, that truth matters, even when it's painful, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish or vindictive. It's necessary. Most importantly, I learned that my story doesn't end with betrayal. That chapter closed when Patricia went to prison and David lost everything he valued. My story continues beyond that, into something better, something mine. I'm not the woman I was at 30. That woman was naive and trusting. She believed in fairy tales and perfect families. She thought love meant overlooking flaws and forgiving everything. The woman I am now knows better. She knows that love requires respect, that trust must be earned, that family can be chosen, not just given, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even when they share your last name. And she knows that betrayal, as painful as it is, can be survived. Not just survived, but transformed into something meaningful, something that helps others, something that changes lives. I still think about those letters sometimes, about sitting on Patricia's guest room floor, reading word after word of betrayal, about the moment my world shattered and then reformed into something harder, clearer, truer. That moment changed everything, but it also saved me, because staying silent would have killed me slowly. Living with people who saw me as an inconvenience, who poisoned me, who stole from me, who lied to me every single day, that would have been a slow death of the spirit. Instead, I chose to fight. I chose to document. I chose to expose the truth, no matter how painful it was. And in choosing to fight for myself, I learned how to help others fight for themselves too. That's my story. Not a story of perfect revenge or complete healing or happily ever after, but a story of survival, justice, and purpose. A story of taking back control. A story of refusing to be a victim. Patricia knew everything, but stayed silent. Now everyone knows why. And now I'm using my voice to make sure other women don't have to suffer in silence the way I did. That's not revenge. That's transformation. And it's the best ending I could have written.